Over the summer, I made this little outhouse looking thing to dispense dog poop bags in our backyard so we could clean up after our dog morties. And my wife declared that, lo, this year for Christmas, all gifts should be made or thrifted. So I went to the local fence company looking for some pickets that I might be able to turn into outhouses. And they found this gate back in the yard for me, and they said, hey, you can have that if you want it. We won't even charge you for it, which was perfect. And it turned out to be cedar. So I had to reclaim the lumber first, pull it apart, take all the nails out. There's all the reclaimed cedar. And then try to get one straight edge to work with on each piece. So run it through the table saw. And then I started cutting them to rough lengths and sizes. I thought that might be a nice kind of door there. The outhouses are going to have a 30-degree sloped shed roof. A little different from the one I showed you at the beginning. But it was a little tricky to get two parallel edges on some of these warped pieces of wood, but managed it in the end. There's the 30-degree slope. Pieces are cut roughly to length, so back to the table saw to cut the width accurately. And again, sometimes that's two cuts to get a clean cut on one side to use as a reference for the other side so that you get two parallel sides. And eventually, I had enough material to make 5 little outhouses. There are all the pieces all cut out. But the roof is going to need shingles or something to look like, appropriately like an outhouse. So I'm going to use the 2x4s that were holding the gate together. I'm cutting some blanks, all the same length there. And then I have a little jig that cuts off these little wedges that at scale look a little bit like shingles, and it's kind of cool that these are actually made of cedar, because that's what a lot of roofing material was or used to be, cedar shakes or cedar shingles. So here we are at the wire brush, putting a little bit of texture on them so they look weathered. This is a kind of a fun process. Each one takes on its own little unique character. Then these are the bottom pieces of each outhouse, and each one's going to get a hole drilled in it, and the hole is going to be countersunk. That's where the bags are going to be dispensed from. I made a little jig so I could drill all the holes in the same place and countersunk them easily. And then here are all the backs stacked together. I drilled one hole and inserted that threaded rod to keep them all lined up so I could drill the other 2 holes. And those holes are to receive actually a piece of threaded rod that's going to be epoxied in there. That epoxy will dry overnight, and each of those is going to hold 1 roll of those dog poop bags. There's one back, a couple more, and another back. Then I ran out of threaded rods, and this is supposed to be reclaimed material, so I found some old 3-inch wood screws. I'm going to use those instead of more threaded rod. And then you got to cope out the traditional half moon shape in the door. There's that process happening. And then it's time for assembly. The sides get attached to the back with some wood glue and some pin nails. There's the other side going on. I'm going to slide the bottom in there with that hole that we drilled a minute ago. And then the roof goes on. So the roof is sloped at 30 degrees and then cut so that the back is going to be parallel to the back so it can attach flat to a wall or a fence or a deck in our case. And then the shingles go on. Wood glue and a couple of staples. And this is a really fun process because it starts to look really cute. It's just an upholstery stapler there. And we work our way from the bottom up. And then when we get to the top, we don't want any staples showing, so I'm going to use a combination of wood glue and CA glue. So a bead of wood glue toward the bottom of the shingle, and then a little bit of CA glue there with the activator I just sprayed on to hold it in place. The CA glue basically acts as a clamp until the wood glue dries. And it's a fun little system because then I don't have to put a staple through. And you can't see any of the attachments. So I'm going to trim that last shingle, apply the CA glue, spray on the activator, and about 3 seconds and it's cured. We need some hinge mortises. I did buy hinges for this project. I had some lying around, but I needed a few extras, so I confess I did purchase the hinges. There's 3 of them in a row. I did make 5. I had to ship a couple early, so they're not pictured here. Trim off the extra shingle material there, a little bit of sanding on the sanding belt. And here's what the assembly looks like. 3 rolls in there. The last one made a little bent metal hook to pull it through so you could load it up like that. And there's the finished product. And there's 3 of them. Thanks so much for watching.